You walk out to check on your garden one morning, and there it is, a small blob of white foam clinging to the stem of your lavender. It looks like someone spit on your plant. You lean in closer, and it looks worse up close. Wet, frothy, slightly bubbly, sitting right where a new leaf is trying to emerge. Your first instinct is to wipe it off, maybe spray it with a hose, maybe assume it is some kind of fungal infection or early sign of disease. You reach for it. Stop. Do not wash that foam off your plant, because what is hiding inside that small, wet mass is not a disease. It is not mold. It is not damage. It is one of the most quietly extraordinary engineering projects happening anywhere in your garden right now, and the creature responsible for it has been perfecting this technique for longer than flowers have existed on Earth. That foam is a spittlebug nest, and today you are going to understand why gardeners and entomologists who actually know what is happening inside that froth have made a deliberate decision to leave it exactly where it is. The creature living inside that foam is the nymph of a small insect most people have never heard of by its proper name. It belongs to the superfamily Cercopoidea, and there are more than 2,600 species of them worldwide. The most common one you will encounter in a North American or European garden is the meadow spittlebug, Philanus spumarius. It is about 6 millimeters long, roughly the size of a pencil eraser. And despite looking like nothing more than a pale, soft-bodied speck when you wipe the foam away, this creature is doing something inside that froth that researchers are still trying to fully understand. Here's the first thing most people get wrong. That foam is not spit. It does not come from the creature's mouth at all. It comes from the other end. The nymph feeds by inserting needle-like mouthparts into the plant's xylem, the internal water transport system that carries fluid and dissolved minerals up from the roots. But xylem sap is extraordinarily dilute. It contains almost no protein, almost no sugar, almost no usable nutrition. To survive on a fluid that thin, the nymph has to drink staggering quantities of it. Researchers studying meadow spittlebug metabolism have measured nymphs processing between 150 and 280 times their own body weight in fluid every single day. That is not a typo. Every 24 hours, a creature the size of a grain of rice is pumping hundreds of times its own mass in liquid through its body. At that rate, a human being would need to drink several thousand gallons a day. All that excess fluid has to go somewhere. The nymph excretes it from its abdomen, and as the liquid passes out, the nymph pumps air into it using rhythmic contractions of its body. The air gets trapped in the fluid by surface-active proteins and fatty acids the nymph secretes, creating stable bubbles at a rate of roughly 1 per second. Within 15 to 30 minutes, the nymph is completely encased. The result has the consistency of beaten egg whites, and that simple-looking foam is doing far more than it appears. A study published in Scientific Reports found that the foam functions as a thermoregulatory microhabitat. Researchers measuring temperatures inside and outside the foam discovered that the interior maintains a stable temperature close to that of soil, even as external air temperatures fluctuate throughout the day. The foam shields the nymph from ultraviolet radiation. It prevents desiccation in dry conditions. And it is bitter-tasting and physically sticky to small predators, which means assassin bugs, spiders, and parasitic wasps, creatures that would otherwise make a quick meal of an exposed nymph, struggle to reach it. The foam is not waste. It is climate-controlled body armor built from recycled plant water. Here is where the story becomes extraordinary. The nymph cannot survive on xylem sap alone. The fluid is too nutritionally empty. No animal could extract enough amino acids from it to build proteins and grow. But the spittlebug does not do this alone. Inside specialized organs in its abdomen called bacteriomes, the spittlebug houses two ancient bacterial partners that have been co-evolving with it for more than 200 million years. One is called Candidatus sulcia mulleri. The other is Candidatus zinderia insecticola. Between them, they manufacture all 10 essential amino acids the spittlebug cannot produce on its own. Sulcia synthesizes 7. Zinderia handles the remaining 3, specifically the 3 most energetically expensive amino acids to produce. Researchers studying this partnership discovered something unexpected. The two bacterial partners divide not just the work of amino acid production, but the underlying energy metabolism itself. The Sulcia bacterium processes glucose through aerobic glycolysis, producing pyruvate and lactate as byproducts. Those byproducts are then exported to the Zinderia bacterium, which feeds them into the TCA cycle to generate the enormous amounts of energy required to synthesize its 3 costly amino acids. This metabolic arrangement, where cells rapidly convert glucose to lactate even in the presence of oxygen, has a name in another field entirely. In oncology, it is called the Warburg effect. It is the exact same metabolic signature that cancer cells use to fuel rapid, uncontrolled growth. The same process that drives tumor metabolism in human disease has been running quietly inside spittlebugs for 200 million years, not to cause harm, but to solve one of the hardest nutritional puzzles in the insect world. Researchers at Cornell published their findings on this in the ISME journal, noting that this syntrophic splitting of carbon metabolism may be far more widespread in animal microbe symbioses than anyone previously realized. Now, let that settle for a moment. That small blob of foam on your lavender contains a creature that drinks hundreds of times its own weight every day, builds a climate-controlled shelter from its own waste, and runs a metabolic partnership inside its body that mirrors one of the most studied processes in cancer biology. And it does virtually no damage to your plant. Extension entomologists across multiple states consistently report that in normal garden settings, spittlebug feeding causes little to no measurable harm to healthy plants. The meadow spittlebug feeds on more than 400 host plant species and almost never reaches population densities high enough to cause visible injury. There is one more detail worth knowing. When that nymph finishes its development and molts into an adult, it becomes something else entirely. The adult form is called a frog hopper, and it holds the world record for the highest jump relative to body size of any insect ever measured. Research led by Malcolm Burrows at the University of Cambridge documented frog hoppers launching themselves over 70 centimeters into the air, more than 100 times their own body length. To achieve this, the insect accelerates at more than 400 times the force of gravity in less than 1 millisecond. A fighter pilot in a pressure suit begins to lose consciousness at around 10 Gs. This 6-millimeter insect routinely experiences 400. It does this using a catapult mechanism built into its skeleton, a pair of bow-shaped internal structures called pleural arches made from layers of hard cuticle and a rubbery protein called resilin. The insect slowly contracts its muscles to bend these arches like a composite bow, then releases all that stored energy in a single explosive extension of its hind legs. The human equivalent would be clearing a 70-story building from a standing start. So, here's what you should actually do when you see that foam on your plants. Leave it alone. The nymph inside is not hurting your garden. It is processing plant water, feeding a 200-million-year-old bacterial partnership, and building toward a metamorphosis that will turn it into one of the most mechanically extraordinary jumpers in the animal kingdom. If you absolutely must remove it, a gentle spray of water will dislodge the nymph without chemicals. Pesticides are largely ineffective anyway because the foam physically blocks contact with sprays. But there is no reason to remove it. The foam will disappear on its own when the nymph completes its final molt and leaps away. The next time you see that froth on your rosemary, your strawberries, or your ornamental grasses, you are not looking at damage. You are looking at one of the oldest survival strategies in the insect world, a creature that figured out how to turn the thinnest food source in the entire plant kingdom into a viable life, and wrapped itself in a self-made shelter to do it. That foam is not a problem. It is proof that your garden is alive in ways you are only beginning to see. Have you ever noticed spittlebug foam on your plants and wondered what it was? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every single one, and this is exactly the kind of story this community was built for. And if you want to understand another creature hiding in your garden, one that is not building a shelter but digging a network beneath your feet that connects every plant you own to every other, the next video is already waiting for you. This is 6 Legs Deep. I will see you in the next one.